So our topic is communication for academic purposes. So what is academic communication? Academic communication involves presenting ideas effectively and formally in a scholastic environment. It's also called scholarly communication. It also refers to the methods of communications that are highly structured and generally only used in pedagogical settings. It means that for academic purposes, it is such like research paper. So next, these are the guidelines for making a academic paper. First is select a topic. Most of the times, these topics are given by your professors or teachers. And then next is formulate a working thesis statement. So this this means that this is your main point of your research paper. So when the reader reads this statement, it gives the reader an overview of what's going to be the flow or the what's this research paper going to produce. Next is prepare preliminary questions. So these questions are questions that the reader is going to ask you when they read your research paper. So to prevent this from happening, just think ahead and do not wait for it to happen. Just put all the ideas in there. Find sources. You can find sources from various books, Google Scholar, or existing research paper, but always make sure that you cite all the citations and references. Take down and organize notes. Outline your paper. Outline your paper to organize your ideas. It's because it is the flow of the research page. It's the flow of the paper. Next is draft your paper, revise and edit, and check documentation. Check documentation is again, this is where you cite all the citations and referencing. So arriving at a research paper, there's two types of research paper, quantitative and qualitative. So first is literature review. Second is literature review is basically just like referencing and citations. Next is methodology. Methodology is this is the this where this is where you discuss the methods. What are the techniques on how techniques or analyzation that you reach that answer, that you reach that conclusion. Next is findings, analysis, and recommendation. So a good paragraph has a unity, coherence, brevity, and emphasis. So when you say unity, it should be that the paragraph is ideas are unified. Ideas must be linked together. It's because it's very easy to understand when the ideas are linked together. So coherence, it should be that the transition of one idea to another is very smooth and they call this very smooth and should be like, easy to understand. Brevity or brief, your paragraph must be concise and precise. So emphasis is emphasizing the main topic or your primary topic of your paragraph. So a paragraph can be narrative. Narrative is it tells an event, a series of events. Basically, it's just like a story. So next is descriptive paragraph. It's like telling all the details, describing a place, an object, or describing anything. Could be anything. So next is next is expository. Expository paragraph is paragraph that gives us information, gives us knowledge. It explains an idea, and, and expository must be factual and not opinionated. So next is argumentative paragraph. Argumentative paragraph is this is the paragraph where you defend your point. You have a side. You have a decide you choose to defend your point. To, so academic writing style. So academic writing style is like a fish. So so F is formality, I for impersonality, S for the structure, H for the hedging. F. So here is F. F. Don't use contractions. What are contractions? Contractions is just like what's there. Don't, are not, is not. So instead of those, use are not. Do not, is not. Next is don't use colloquial language or slang, since it's talking about formality. So there, don't use word like kid. Use a much more formal word of it, like child. Next is always write as concisely as you can. Generally avoid phrasal verbs. So what are these phrasal verbs? Phrasal verbs are two or more words. For example, when you use the word throw away, instead of throw away, use the start. When you use like get out, use the leave instead. And then next is avoid common but vague words and phrases. Avoid overuse of brackets. Don't use exclamation marks or dashes. Avoid direct questions. Always use capital letters appropriately and never use the type of language in texting. So when we're texting, we oftentimes spam exclamation points, question marks, and periods. Especially when we're excited, we tend to spam all those. We tend to spam like exclamation point. So don't use those when making a research paper. And also observe proper use of capital letter. Always use proper use of capital letter. Capital letter when we are texting, and like we don't use periods. And then even if we do, we don't capitalize next letter of the period. So don't use that in writing a research paper. For the I is generally avoid personal language. So should be like neutral or in the third person of your perspective in the third person. Next is never use emotive language, objective rather than subjective. Avoid being dogmatic. Don't be a Karen or a simp. When writing a research paper is don't preach and don't sound accusing. Consistency use evidence from your source reading and referring to this correctly. Avoid sexist language. Avoid he, she, herself, himself, etc. So instead, so this part is instead of he or she, use they or them. You should refrain from using like chairman, chairwoman. Use they if you're um, directing to someone, referencing, excuse me, referencing to someone. S is for the structure. Make sure you write in complete sentences. Divide your writing up into paragraphs. Use connecting words and phrases to make your writing explicit and easy to follow. Check your grammar and spelling carefully. Use nominalizations and passive. Always proofread your research paper. It's a very must to proofread your research paper. Next is H for the hedging. This is because basically being cautious on what language, what words you're going to use. First is use impersonals. Impersonal subject, as what I mentioned earlier, is use they or them, that. Then use passive verbs. Use verbs such as imagine, suggest, claim, or suppose. You use these words if your source are only a theory or not established, not established fact. Use those words instead. It's just like you're being honest. Just be honest in research paper. Don't make something not something that is not factual. Just be honest. Use attitudinal signals such as apparently, agreeably, ideally, strangely, unexpectedly. Use verbs such as could, may, or might. Use qualifying adverbs such as some, several, or merely a few, many, to avoid making overgeneralization. You should be careful. Don't overextend or over generalize your research paper. Okay, so that's all. And thank you. That's all for the um, communication for academic purposes.